So now we're going to get into the more meatier content of our presentation today. So this section covers the animating basic graphic elements. So this is where we're actually going to transition back over. So today, for our demonstration, we are going to be animating a selector switch. We are creating a generic indication object, or we are going to be creating a tank level with fill animation. So it's going off of the PLC code that we developed for our panel view, or our Studio 5000 basics class. We will have a numeric input where we can adjust the timer. We have a multi-state indicator. For ours, we're only going to create 2 state, but you'll see how to create many. We'll have simple screen navigation between the two, between 2 separate screens. And then lastly, we are going to have an ActiveX to create a PDF launch. So before we get to our demonstration there, I just want to cover real quickly, because when we get to that, we're going to show our testing is going to happen. So the first thing, there are 3 separate methods. For today, we are primarily going to be testing a single display. So to test one individual display, you will hit the play button. So once you have the display open, you can hit this play button here. That will render the graphic, so to speak, and allow you to see live values as long as you're connected to a controller, and test individual functionality on that screen. It will not work with global objects because it only works on that screen. And it also will not allow you to navigate, again, because it's just that individual screen itself. The second method that you can do is you can hit the test application. What that will do is it will compile your entire application, run it as if it was a runtime, not fully, because it is just a temporary runtime that'll run, but it'll open up in the top left corner of your setup, and it'll allow you to test navigation and make sure that that general functionality is working. And the last and final and probably the most thorough method is to actually create a runtime, and then on your PC, if you have Studio installed, it will automatically install the FactoryTalk View ME station. That allows you to open up and run the full station as if it was a panel view just on your computer. The only things that would be different there is if you are launching something from memory or pulling anything from a panel view memory, the memory location will be different. So that is where you will want to download into a panel view and actually test that. And that would require you to either have the panel view physically in front of you, or set up that VNC viewer, like I said, we are actually going to look at today. So from here, we're going to transition over onto our virtual machine, and we are going to create a new application. So I'm going to use View Studio shortcut to create a new one. We're going to create a Machine Edition application. So you can see I have a few applications I've already used, but I want to create a new application. So for today, we're going to do FTView _ME _basics. All right, so we are creating a FactoryTalk View ME basics application. Today I have a panel view +7. I have the performance style, and it's the 9-inch wide screen. So if you had a application like a panel builder application or something like that, you can import it here. But for us, we're creating a new one. So we're going to make the new. Oh, looks like I already made an account, but okay. So since I already have that application name, what we're going to do, which I haven't shown you yet. So if you have an application like that, there is a software installed called Application Manager. So this is where you can restore. How I kept saying previously, you can restore a application. This is where you would also back up an application. You will delete and rename, but for us, we're going to delete. And it looks like it said I had a, yep, right there. So FTView ME basics. So we're going to finish. Are you sure you want to delete? So for us, now we can actually create our new application. A lot of times you will use Application Manager when you're attempting to restore a runtime application. Today, we don't really have to worry about that. But again, we're going to do new application. Let's try this again. FTView _ME _basics. All right. Select our proper hardware again. We do have the performance. Click create. And since we are creating a new application, we will need to create a new FactoryTalk links configuration like I was saying before. So again, the screen should look very much so like we seen in the PowerPoint. So by default, your displays will always have an alarm page, a diagnostic or alarm banner, a diagnostic banner, an information banner, and then a main screen is always created. So for today, we're going to start with our main screen here. And one other key element is you always, or you should attempt to try and have a shutdown button or go-to configuration button somewhere configured within your screen. Not necessarily on your main screen where I'm going to have it today, but you want to have that in case you ever need to get back out to that configuration. This is the button that would do it for you. In the event you deleted it, you can always come up here and you go to this shutdown button. It looks like a power button. It doesn't shut down the panel view, it just shuts down the application so you can get back to the screen where you can configure the panel view itself. So right now I don't have anything on the screen, but I don't really like having a white background. It typically is hard on the eyes and not always the best. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a background that's gray, a darker gray, just to start working with. Just a little bit easier to see, and visually it's a little bit more appealing. All right, so if we're looking at our list, the first thing we were going to do is we were going to add a selector switch. So in our PLC program that we had this morning, we had a manual and auto toggle switch. So we're going to represent that as a maintained push button. So we'll select the push button, come down here and drag and drop it and make it the size we want. I'm going to leave the thing here so you can change next state based on a value control or current state. So for us, we have just, it was auto and manual. So I'm just going to leave it as a current state will dictate the next state because we are only going to have the two states. So one other thing, so common is where we can adjust the size. So just to make things easy, we're going to do a 100 by 100 and our top will do 50 and left will do 50. All right, but now we're going to get back. So that's just a little bit of clerical work, but that's in your common. That's just the size and position of your object. So then here for state 0, we want this to be our manual. So you can insert a caption to write on this, or for our instance, what I want to do is I actually want it to represent a physical toggle switch. So we're going to add an image. So you'll hit the ellipses or the 3 little dots there. And then you have all these embedded. So if I don't see what I want in here, what you could do is you can launch the library. So this library is actually your symbol factory. So we're going to load that. And you can see that it's got numerous different things inside here. Lots and lots and lots of objects. You could also create your own if you wanted to add that. All right, gadget and switches. There we go. Now we'll just do a regular. So we'll just do a selector switch. So our first one is going to be left, and then we got a right. So one thing I noticed is as I selected the switch, this object here does not look the same. If that's true, you can go to this options tab, and you see right here that I have an orientation. You can flip it, and you can also rotate the object. I don't want to have a rotation because they have multiple objects already that are rotations of each other. So now that I have the left switch there, you select copy, and we're going to hit paste from library, and you could name it whatever you want it to be. So I'm going to do selector switch left, and then we're going to click OK. Now we'll just hit apply, just even though we haven't finished doing everything, just to see. And it looks like we have a border around it. We don't. Where did that come from? So in here, so border uses back color. Nope, that didn't get rid of it. So it looks like it's in the state. So pattern style. So we got to figure out why does our border color not match? And what we need to do is we can change the background border to look like that, or you could attempt to rescale, image scale the image to fit your object. So right now it had its own pixel count, but you could scale it that way and it would fit to make the object that way. So there's two different ways that you can do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do both just to make things better. So we just know that left was manual, and then we're going to have state. So we need to do our second state. So we're going to launch library again. Now we're going to do the right selector switch. We're going to copy, paste. This one's right. Click OK. So let's change our border color. So now we have a selector switch, but so you can go back through the properties, or you can right click and go to connections. We have to tie it to something. So one thing we haven't done yet is we haven't set up our tag database. So where are all of our tags? So you could, again, create your own HMI tags. For today's purpose, I am not going to create HMI tags, but it would be the same thing. So you'd hit your ellipses, and see the tag browser. So you can't find anything because we haven't set up your communications yet. So we're not going to use HMI tags. I'm actually going to do direct referencing, and I'm going to go straight to the HMI. So there's two different ways you can do that. So we're going to open up our communications, and the two ways are you can do it through an offline file. So here's our create configuration. You can do it through an offline file, or you can do it if the controller is networked. So I'm going to show you both because the controller is networked, but I do want to show you that you can have an offline tag file. So again, we have an empty shortcut. For today, I only have one controller. So if I had multiple or anything else, you'd want to have a more descriptive shortcut here. I do have a panel view plus, so you do see the serial DF1 communications. But for me, I am currently talking to the controller, right? So this is the controller only. I'm talking to the controller via Ethernet, and it is that controller which we created this morning. And then for our offline tag file, what you have to do is you need to point it to the ACD file or the project file for the controller. And then you can click open. All right, so now the shortcut here is highlighted, the path is highlighted, and your offline tag file is in there, and your shortcut type is a processor. You must hit apply. This is going to say it's changing it from nothing to this. And same thing for the path. Click yes. Now once that's done, now this PLC name can go directly to this PLC and look for it. But this is your design or local environment only. So this is on your PC. When you transfer it, you transfer the runtime. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the design to the runtime. The runtime target will be overridden. I'm going to say yes. Now that that's done, what I like to always do, it's not a requirement, what I like to do though, is go and hit verify. So right here, you can see a path to design device is assigned, and it's a Logix design. An offline tag file is found and is on the workstation. So in the event that the tag file doesn't like it, you will get an error or prompt here. And then the other one is a path to the runtime device is assigned. If any of those come back and don't say that they are assigned, then you know that something went wrong with either the copy to runtime or the shortcut path you selected is not valid. So that's where I always hit the verify just to make sure everything is okay. So we're going to click OK, close it, and it makes our screen full screen, but I don't really want it to be because later on we're going to be working with two screens simultaneously. But now I have the ability to change what we have here. So for a value, now we're going to refresh all folders. And now we see that shortcut for PLC. And again, you have offline. That is going to use, so if you do not have a controller networked, you can just use your development file as an offline. If you do have a network controller, it's nice to be able to select the online and browse. So as you are editing, you can go in and make changes. So for us, we had a selector switch, and we are going to mode switch. Press OK. So hitting that tag fills in this syntax for you. And this is what I was saying, that it looks a little bit weird. And it's even more complicated if it's the program or a local type tagged, because this tag type or the tag name is no longer just the tag name, but it has to have the reference to the program folder that it was in also. So for us, we're just going to leave it like that. And then for the indicator, we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to tie it straight to that mode switch. That's okay. So the value is what we are writing to the controller, because this is a maintained push button. And the indicator is telling me what I show. So we're just going to press OK. We're going to hit save. And we're going to test this to make sure that it's working. So we're going to hit the play button. Doesn't look like anything changed. But what we need to do is we need to go back to our controller real quick. We're going to go online. And we are in 0. So 0 was manual. I press it. Okay. Now it moved to the right. You heard the ding. Let's see if it worked. And boom. Our mode switch is actually on. So this is where it's nice to just hit the play button, because you can now test to make sure the individual screen has its functionality. All right, so I'm going to hit the stop button so we can go back to configuring. But really what I need to do is also add a little bit of text right here, right? And we're going to say manual mode. Well, we'll just do manual because we notice our selector switch. Click apply. So instead of guessing which size it is, we're going to hit our selector, bring this down, Control C, Control V, that way it's identical. We're actually going to align these. So your alignment properties are on top, so we're going to align them here. Manual and auto. Apply. Okay. So by holding the control button, you can toggle between selecting the different devices. There we go. So now we're pointing to manual. Actually, you know what? Let's change that font color to white. And we're going to make it bold. Apply. Same thing. Change this to white. We'll bold. Apply. Okay. There we go. So now we have our selector switch, and we know it's working. So the next thing that I was wanting to build in was just a simple indicator. So I'm doing a rounded rectangle. What this is going to do is I just want to know what mode we are in. So I don't want to override what is happening inside the controller, which would be a button, but I just want to show what is happening. So now in this, we can do an animation, and you can change the animation of this thing. So we're going to have visibility, and we're just going to do, so on our visibility, so we are going to be visible if the expression is true, and we're going to tie this to a tag. And I don't know if you remember or not, but we had a tag called webinar mode. All I want to do is just tell me, am I in webinar mode? So this simple object, I just want to show up and go away if we are in webinar mode. The other thing we can do is you can add a color. So we'll say, yeah, so we'll be red. If we're not, we'll change it from green to a little bit darker. There we go. So let's delete that expression actually. So we won't show what it is. We'll actually just change the color instead. So we'll get over here, change this. So now our tag is off of webinar mode. Apply. So now let's do properties, and we're going to make this guy match the other one that we did. So 100, 100. So top, we'll do 200. Left, we'll do 50. Apply. Okay. So now it looks somewhat similar to our previous one. We're just going to hit save, let play. So now if our webinar mode, which is controlling my I/O, it is on. So if we turn off webinar mode, our object turns red. So those animations are really nice to be able to manipulate and modify. But this gives you just a basic graphic element that allows you to indicate something is happening or changing. So the next one that's a little bit more important, a little bit better, right, is we're going to launch that symbol library, which is still up for us. We were going to add a tank. So we just have a tank here, and we know our tank had a bottom outlet valve, so we're just going to take this and drag it over here. To change this one, we need to use our property panel So our group height, we're going to be bigger than what we had before, so 100. Our width, let's match our previous width with 100. That looks a little bit better sized. The other thing we're going to add, pull back up our symbol library, is a little cutaway so that we can animate it. We'll do this little cutaway. Drag it, drop it, throw it over here. Doesn't have to be perfect. We just kind of want it somewhat centered. But that object there, we want to add an animation, and we are going to fill this. So this animation is going to use a constant. It's going to be 0 to 100, so 0 to 100% filled. Here's your percentage fill again. And we want to look at our tank level tag. Click apply. So now that will fill our object as we are going. So we're going to save, pause. Oh, and it looks like I added it to the tank itself. So you see how the tank is partially there, and it's because it was added incorrectly. So let's go to this. So animation, fill, we're going to delete that. There we go. That's the object we want to animate. So we're going to fill, we're going to leave it. So it keeps our previous information. Just have to tie it to our tag again. Click apply, click close, hit save. So we see that there now, but what I like actually is if you've seen the whole thing, right? We want to see the outline so it doesn't just disappear. So that is a part of the settings. So in that fill animation, I just want to fill the inside of this object. So we're going to click apply, close, and hit save again. There. So now you see the outline. It looks as if there is a tear on it. And let's look at our routine again. And our tank level animation is at 45%. It looks approximately 45% of the whole object. So that's pretty good. So that's how you can add a tank level or something else like that. You would want to use a fill animation. For us, it was best to have it fill just the inside because I wanted to see the outside of the graphic. But that again would be based on preference. The next thing that I wanted to implement is we're going to put in our numeric input. So we're going to hit stop. We're going to put a text bar. And we're going to put, let's see, this is going to be delay after sensor 1. So we're going to be, apply, let's change it to white again, and bold, do the same as what we did before, delay after sensor 1, okay. So we are doing a numeric input. So you can kind of pan along the top, but it's this one here, numeric input, so it looks like a number. It doesn't need to be that large, but we're going to do it that way anyways. And again, you have several different appearances that you can change. For now, I'm not really going to change much of anything. For a label, we're going to want to see what the real value is. So let's do the insert variable, and it's going to be a numeric value. And you could either put in a literal number where you can just type it, or we can attach it to a tag. So I want to go ahead and assign it to a tag. And it was solenoid 3, but I don't see a delay. And the reason is we are on the root folder. So this is all your global tags. But for a timer or an add-on instruction or a program tag or any other defined type that has tags embedded within tags, you need to come over to here. So what I'm looking for was this delay. So inside of every timer, there are 5 tags. There are the accumulated value, the done bit to let you know that the accumulated value has reached the preset value, which is pre, the enable, and then timer timing. So since this is a value and a number that I want to show, I actually want to show what is our current preset. I'm going to click OK. Our preset is always in milliseconds. For us, we want between 10, we're currently at 10 seconds, so milliseconds, we're going to do 6 digits to display. You could increase that. You can add decimal places if it was a real value. For us, since I'm going directly to the timer itself, it's always got to be a double integer, so it's never a decimal place. And again, it's always in milliseconds, and I want to enter in seconds, so we're going to do up to 6 digits. Click OK. Now the next thing we have is the numeric. So you see the little numbers show up, which means that it is a tag. It's assigned and waiting. You can assign a min and max here on your numeric. You can also have a scratch pad or no keypad option pop up. So if they have a keyboard, external keyboard, and you don't want a keypad to show up on the screen, you can turn it to none. For us, I'm going to also limit us. I'm going to say you can't go above 60,000, which is 60 seconds. You could tag it to a variable if you choose to also. Timing. This is how long do you need to press and hold, things along that nature. So let's do our width. Let's do 150 because we don't need to be that big. Our height, we'll do 40 just because it's pretty close. But really the primary area where we need to go is here. So this is our value. What value are we writing to? So we are also writing. So we want to write to that preset, and then our label is displaying what is that preset for us. There's a couple other things. So you can enter in your max and min, or if you want the PLC to control your max and min, you can do that, as opposed to setting your max and min here physically on the HMI. For now, I'm just going to leave it like this. Click apply. Okay. Save. And there you go. You see a 10-second. I'm pretty sure that's what our timer was, but we'll look here. So there, you see your 10,000 second or 10,000 milliseconds. If we wanted to change it, we can go in, say we only want to do a 5,000 milliseconds or 5 second. Now, if you wanted, you can make it better by changing this to a single numeric input and then doing multiplication inside the controller. But for our demonstration purposes, this will do pretty well. But you can see that my label changed to 5,000, and boom, here, we're at 5,000 on that delay solenoid. So that's how you would modify and insert a numerical data point into the PLC. So the next thing I want to do is a multi-state indicator. So I want to know that either we can do it off the solenoid or we'll do it off of the motor, just because that's a pretty common practice. So here's your multi-state indicator. So what I want to do is we're going to make it the same size as the other one, or pretty close at least. We'll get there, modify it. So here is the number of states, maximum of 2,000. So if you wanted to create your own alarm banner, you can do it that way. For me, right now, what we're doing is we're doing just the 2 states trigger type. The most common is a value versus least significant bit. That's if you want to pass it if you're using Booleans, but you want to pass it a DINT. I prefer to just go ahead and deal with a value. So we'll go to states. So state 0 is going to be motor stopped. State 1 is motor running. So I can tie this to a Boolean because a Boolean only has a value of 0 and 1. If you have multiple states, you'll have to pass it a integer or something else. We can hit apply just to see. That fits pretty good, and we'll leave it like that. So the next thing is our indicator. What is going to toggle our state for us? So what I wanted to do on that one, right, is, yeah, we'll do it off of the motor, but we'll do the motor status input because it's physically tied to one of my hardwired input I have here. So as my output turns on, as long as the input is reading, I'll get this input status. Some people call that motor feedback, whatever you want to call it, but that's what we're just going to monitor and see when the motor is running. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to click Save. We're going to test this. So at this point, we've built just kind of a basic setup. I remember that the green means we're in webinar mode so that I know my I/O is going to be working for me. It's not looking for some external outside source. Right now we're in manual though, so I won't be able to do anything. So what we need to do is actually flip it to auto. As soon as we flip it to auto, we see our animation is working for us. Because that was the first thing, is we'll flip it. So it should toggle input sensor 1. Let's go back and check. So nothing's really changed and our motor is still stopped, but now we're at 100% and our T here. Okay, so input 2 is on. All right, now we see that our motor is running. We could have put a different numeric display just to see how long the motor was running or something along that nature. But at the end of that, you see that the motor stopped. Our animation is dropping. And this should only run for 5 seconds. So we'll see if we'll actually empty the whole thing. I'm not 100% sure that we will. We might. Let's see if we'll make it. Oh yeah, we're waiting for our sensor 1 input to not be on. That's what it was. Okay, so it did look like we emptied the whole thing, and we're gonna start filling it back up. going to flip it back into manual because our scenario just completed and started back over. So at this point, we're going to stop. We don't need to modify this one anymore, but we do want to make it a new screen. So first, what we need to do is we need to go to displays over here, right click in new, or you could copy or duplicate an existing screen. We don't need to duplicate. I prefer to just make a new one. So we're going to make new. This is where we're going to do this here. So we're going to bring the second one. Again, I just don't like having the white background. Change ours to the gray. We're just going to save the screen just so we can give it a name. So by saving, it automatically makes it. So what we're going to do is on this screen, we're going to do a PDF viewer. So we'll go back to this one. So by default, on our startup, so I'm going to go to our startup menu here. We're going to run the main. So whenever you create a project, it will always make the graphics that it made first, the main as the selected display to load. If you have a navigation bar or something else, you can add multiple screens to run. So there are a couple different things. Here, this is also where you would enable an audit trail if you need to do it that. But for now, we're just going to leave it. The main is going to be the first one that runs. We don't need to do anything else. We click OK. So now we know when we run our application, main is going to be first. The next thing that we want to do is have the ability to navigate. So you just kind of hover over. We're going to select. Gonna make it. We'll just do this one. So on this one, you need to select what display are you going to navigate to. We're going to navigate to the PDF display. You could pass it parameters if you wanted to, either a file or a list. Add a label. So this is going to be go to PDF. Let's see if that fits on my button there. Yeah, it fits pretty good. It looks fine. Okay, so connections. You can change the display name by a remote tag. You can change the positions where it's at. For our purposes, we'll just leave it like this. It's just a static. But the one thing that is nice is if you take this, Control-C, you come back over to here, Control-V, it will take the exact object in the exact location and put it on the next screen for you. So now we're on the PDF screen. We need to make sure we can navigate back to the main. Apply. Don't forget to change your label, otherwise people are going to get confused. Make sure it fits. Yeah, it fits pretty good. And we got to hit save on the first one too. Okay, so now the first screen I think is working. And navigate to this. So our play button, if we do this right, it won't navigate. And you can see this down here. You get an error that says go to display button unable to open because you're in the development environment. So without running the application, it's got no way of navigating. But the last thing that we're going to show here, right, that I was talking about previously is the ActiveX control. And it's this little X up here. So I'm just going to make a little button. And as you can see, there are numerous buttons that you can implement in this. Most of the time, the functionality you're going to be looking for, or hopefully most of the time, it will be these ME, so Machine Edition ActiveX controls. There are several, or could be potential times where you're going to run Microsoft ones. I would be weary of doing that because you cannot change between revisions if you do that. So if you create an ActiveX, it's a Microsoft linked ActiveX in version 11, and the panel view is version 10, the ActiveX may not work properly because it's tied to the firmware, or it's tied to the firmware that you have of your development environment. Whereas the ME ones are not as susceptible, but could potentially still have that issue. To launch a PDF though, we're going to do our program launcher. So we're going to click OK. To launch a PDF, so there is no general configuration. Your commons, you can set up your size and position, same as usual, right? But everything really occurs on this program launcher properties. I'm going to set this up so that we can run this application on our local environment. So this is going to be different if you had it on your local environment as opposed to using it on the panel view itself. So the panel view plus 7 has a PDF viewer. It's Foxit Reader that's embedded in the Windows drive on the panel view. So that would be the location that you'd want to use for that one. For now, what I'm going to do is I actually have this. I know the shortcut for my application. I'm going to blow this up in the expression just so you can see it. So for my virtual machine, I do not have a PDF viewer installed, but you can use a browser, which I do have installed. So I have Chrome installed. So I'm using Chrome. So I put that in there. You can validate the syntax. It says it's okay. So that is the program location. The program parameter is the name of the file that you want to launch, the PDF itself. I also have that set to the side, so we're going to do the expression again, Control V. So all I'm going to launch is the ES&E 2020 training schedule. It's just a single page PDF, pretty small. I didn't want to load anything too large. But those are the two things that I would have. If you wanted to tie it to a remote trigger to launch it, so say there's an alarm, you can do it off of this launch enable. There's numerous other things you could do with this, but I just want to show you the basics. We're going to hit apply, click OK, hit save, and let's see if it works. So you'll see that it highlights off of this. When you press it, it'll launch the browser and brings up our ES&E schedule. So that will work based on your application here. When you go to transfer that into the panel view itself, though, you will need to change, again, the locations, because I used what was local to my computer, so that part is different. So that is all the objects that we planned on animating and developing today. All right, so I did not run through running, but I did highlight that you need this shutdown button, right? So if you do run the application and you do not include a shutdown button, you will have to reboot or shut down your computer or go to your task manager and shut down the application that way, because there is just no way to exit out of the application without that shutdown button. Whereas the test application, which is the little run man here, or the play button or the test display, both have embedded ways of shutting down the application. The last thing I did want to point out that Rockwell has been attempting to get much more in depth with their videos for FactoryTalk View ME and their View Designer that does allow you to do a lot of hands-on or quick learning type classes on their YouTube page. They're up to almost 1,000 videos just on FactoryTalk View Machine Edition. I think they're at 950. So really, really close to 1,000 videos. So in the event that I'm not answering anything during today's session, you can try and look at that, or you can always call us or get back with us.